Okay, my name is Natalie Trice, and I teach title at Sam Houston. And Becky and I went to the school where um, Stephanie taught at to just kind of see what the program was all about. And we really liked it and thought it would be a good asset to bring back to Lebanon Special School District. And I piloted it in my kindergarten classroom. And at the time, were you kindergarten or first? She was kindergarten as well. So we did it in the kindergarten classroom, and we really liked it. And so then after that, we adopted it at some schools I know, and then I use it in the Title One program. Has anybody used Tiles, like actually use the Tiles program in your group? Yes. So no. Okay. Well, so hopefully we're gonna just give you an overview of basically about the skills taught with the program, materials, the layout of the board, and then how you can integrate other things as far as literature and games to apply to your Tiles program. For some reason, this is not casting my new slide on there. What's on my computer is not on there. Um, Sorry. Awesome. It, it was really slow earlier today too. Sorry, guys. I think LSSD gave it to me. All right. So if you have never taught tile before, you come depending on what grade you teach. There's a kindergarten manual, and then there is a first and second manual, and it is very scripted on exactly what you say. So you'll come with it'll come with whatever manual that you're teaching, and then it comes with the student material. The student material, the board looks like this, and there's two sides to it. One side has the letters. These letters are already on there, so the students can match their letters to there. And then the other one does not have it, so it's your preference on what you want to use. In kindergarten, I did use the side with the letters because it was helpful for them to match them up. So you'll get that, and then you get the teacher board, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and the letters. And we decided to put Velcro on the back of them, unless you have a magnetic board. I guess you could use magnets, but we put Velcro on the back, and then depending on what grade you teach, you may get other charts that you can use along the way. You also get letter tiles, which if your school has used that before, they're already probably have the letters already on there. But if your school hasn't used them, you'll just put the letters on the tiles um, as you use them. When we first got it, we just instead of putting all the letters on there at one time, we just as we did a lesson, maybe a few days before, you would do maybe so many, however you felt comfortable with, so that way it's not so overwhelming to do all the letters that you need. Um, and then if you there's blue tiles, there's red tiles, green tiles, and then yellow tiles. When you're teaching with a student, all the student needs to have the same color tiles. So if you're teaching this student, they need to have all blue tiles or all red or all green, and then the vowel tiles are all going to be yellow because they light up the word for the student. So, and then they also said that if a student has vision difficulties, that if you use the red tile, that might help them. So just make sure they all end up having the same color, and then the vowels will be yellow when you sort them out. So that's why it's just saying don't, mix the colors. All right, and then Becky's going to show you actually how to teach a lesson. We have, she's going to teach a first grade lesson for you. Okay, so this is the teacher board right here. You'll want to keep it
Right here. This. Can that be in my pocket? So this is your teacher board. Everything would be preloaded. So you would have your tiles on here. This is going to be how your kids set their board up. So their board would be empty, and then they would be given a box, just like this, and whatever tiles you build up. So the tiles in here are the skills that have been taught. So for example, if you have your consonants then then you would have your consonants in here. And as you teach a skill, you'll put it here and here. Does that make sense? That way they don't get overwhelmed, and it teaches them slowly how to set their board up, because this is a challenge. Honestly, this will be your hardest part for your students, because they have a bucket, they have a board, and the setup sometimes takes a minute. So they set up or whatever, and then you start your lesson. I always tell my kids, there's a little tab right here on the top. I always tell them to hold their house and pull the tab, sort of pull the roof off slowly. And I tell them you have to kind of go to all corners of the roof and then lay your roof under your house. Otherwise, this is going to be going like this, in your shirt, up your nose, all those things. I mean, that's just what they do. So I always tell them to lay it under. And I always tell mine to go in backdoor neighbors. So if they're sitting, of course, I know with COVID it'll be a little bit different, but they always kind of put it at the top just so they can have everything close by. Is there anything else about just little tricks about that y'all do? So then that kind of gets them ready, and then they start to set up the tiles, the skills that you've taught or whatever. So I will teach a lesson just like I would teach it with my kids. So y'all are going to have to participate. I know it's early. So I would say to them, okay, boys and girls, today you're going to learn about blends. What are you going to learn about? Blends. Today you're going to learn about L blends. So at this point, they would have gone through all the consonants. They would have probably gotten some short vowels. And we would be ready to just start with blends. Some of the things that I tell them about blends. Blends, 2 letters where you can hear both what? Both sounds. And I call it in my class speedy taps. So a blend always gets a speedy tap. It's just real quick. But you can hear both sounds. That is so important. Now, a digraph is different. A digraph is when 2 letters make how many sounds? 1 sound. So that's hard for them because digraph gets 1 tap, a blend gets 2 speedy taps. Just if you've never taught phonics before, I mean, sometimes we don't know those things. But that's your difference in a blend and a digraph. So I would say, okay, we're going to be working on L blends. And I would say the first word is glad. So I would say, repeat, glad. Tappers up. And I would say, remember, boys and girls, these are blends. So we're going to do a speedy tap. Ready? Glad. Glad. Okay? So then we would pull it. I would say first, let's get that blend. Ready? Glad. And they would build it right here. We call this area right here where the Velcro is down here, the spelling area. Okay? So I'll say, go ahead and take that to your spelling area. And then I would say, okay, let's prove it. Ready? Glad. Just so they can build that word again. And then I would say something like, who can tell me a sentence with glad? Because I want to kind of put it into context for them. What's a sentence? I am glad I had coffee this morning. Yes. So then I do a little song called Hickleby Bickleby Bumblebee, and y'all can sing it with me. It goes, Hickleby Bickleby Bumblebee, won't you say your name for me? All right, say it. Hickleby Bickleby Bumblebee, won't you say your name for me? Glad, clap it, glad, push it up, glad, push it out, glad. How many syllables are in the word glad? 1 syllable. Okay, so I always tell my kids, you have to prove it. Tell me why there's only 1 syllable in glad. Because I don't know if you've ever worked with children, the 1 syllable words are the hardest. I have no idea why. Yes, they're like add four syllables. So you have to teach them how to see it and how to hear it. So somebody tell me, how do you know that there's one syllable in glad? Okay, you only clapped once. That's true. But what's the other reason? What's the phonics reason? Yes, because every syllable gets a what? Has a what? Has a vowel. So I would say, okay, boys and girls, find your vowel. So we would find the vowel. Just little things like that are going to help them to be able to know those syllables. And for some reason, in the South, syllables are so hard. Oh, I don't know. So then we would record it because I'm going to use this later. In the afternoons when we do literacy stations, I have those composition notebooks, and we call them spotty dotties. They're black and white. And I have those, and then we'll take our words from tiles in the morning, and we build sentences with the words that we build. Because you definitely don't want to just do this and walk away. It will never stick. It won't work. The people that don't love tiles, this is probably all they did. They just did it in isolation. They never used it throughout the day. So this is one of the ways I incorporate it into the writing. So if you have a small group and you're doing your tiles, you'll want to record your words and you'll want to use them in some sentences just to make sure that they have an understanding of what they do. And we'll even, circle the blend, that kind of thing. All right, so I'll say, all right, boys and girls, let's take that word back to the home row. This is called the home row. It's just kind of where they live. So I would say, let's get that blend. Ah. Uh-oh, I put it in the wrong one. Another trick to the board. I always, in the corner of the box, put with a Sharpie, put the letter in a little Sharpie, so it kind of helps me remember where they go. It's kind of like a little cheat sheet. All right, so the next word would be, the word is plot. Repeat, plot. Tappers up. Ready? Plot. Plot. All right, so let's build it. So let's go ahead and get that blend. Who can tell me the blend in plot? Somebody say it. Okay, what two letters is that? All right, so let's pull it. All right, let's read it. Ready? Plot. Plot. All right, who can give me a sentence with the word plot? Go ahead. Do you have a sentence? Who has a sentence? Miss Brady, what's a sentence with plot? Yes, the plot of the story was funny. All right, so then we would go into that whole syllable. So we'll try it one more time, just so maybe the song will stick with you. Hickleby, bickleby, bumblebee, won't you say your name for me? Plot, clap it, plot, push it up, plot, daddy voice, plot. How many syllables are in plot? One syllable. All right. And I mean, every day I say, tell me why there's one syllable in plot. And what is the vowel? Yes. All right. So let's take this word back to the home row. Ready? Plot. Plot. Does that make sense? So it's really quick. It's really easy. It's really quick. And then you would put your word plot. And later on, if you want to build sentences, you could build sentences with your list of words. Use them sentence. Try to practice spelling them. Rainbow write them. Just any way that you can incorporate the spelling. What else?
Well, later we had what we were going to talk about with the like stories and passages. Mm-hmm. I think that would be it for that.
So if you wanted to, with the long vowels, so you could go from a short vowel to a long vowel. So now I would say, okay, guys, we've gone from short vowels. Now we're going to go to long vowels. And I still want to try to use those blends. So the word is globe. Repeat, globe. So globe, globe. All right, so let's pull it down. Ready? What's that blend? Oh, okay. So when you pull on a long vowel, you have to pull sneaky E and that vowel at the same time. And you're going to leave your hole. Because that's signaling that that vowel is going to go from short to long. That is so important. If you do this, they don't understand that these are related at all. So just make sure on a long vowel that you're pulling. So I would say, all right, guys, we've got the blend. Gl. Now we've got to make that O. But he lives down here at the bottom of that vowel smile, so he's short O. How would you make that short O a long O? And then somebody will say sneaky E. And so I'll say, and so you go ahead and pull it together. Just make sure you pull it together. So blends, 2 speedy taps. Diagraphs, 1 tap. Long vowel, pull it together. Because you're kind of proving it. And then I'll say, oh, what consonant is missing? And then they will say, B, globe. And then I'll say, okay, let's go ahead and read it. Gl, O, B, globe. A lot of times, like, because I just make stuff up as I go, but I will say, I'll take the sneaky E and I'll say, do, 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 oh. And it teaches them that E is going to make the O say his name. So that kind of just little things like that, anything that you can incorporate, make it kind of your own flavor. And then, of course, we'll list it here, and then we'll go back to the home row. Questions? Who has questions? Surely you've got a question. We've got 3 hours. You got a question? No questions? Everybody knows? Ms. Brady, what's your question?
I don't have a question, but later on, not at the beginning of the year, but later on when we're taking them back to the home row, I pick out a student and they call out the sound.
Yeah, for like cleanup or just like on your spelling area?
Putting them back in the home row.
So a student could say, gl, and then you could, and then O, and then B. So a student could call that out. And when you clean up every day, I always call the sounds, and they find that tile, and then they put it one at a time in. That's just a good way for them to practice hearing those sounds and identifying that letter. A lot of tiles is just honestly management, and if you can manage the tiles, the board, the space, you'll get a good product. It's when the management is gone that it doesn't work. So you have to find little ways where you can stay in control of the lesson, because they're going to take the tiles and they're going to do this. You know, that's just what they do. And then they're going to be all over the floor. If you teach them to keep them in back neighbors, so my tables were in 4s, so I always made the boxes go back door so that they would be at the top, because here's what they're going to do. And that's going to go straight in the floor. Just little things like that. So just backdoor neighbors, the tile board, setting up down here. Now on the student board, it doesn't have like the Velcro, of course, because these are not magnetic. So you'll just kind of use this little corner for your spelling row. And like I said, I use my list, and we use it in the Spotty Dotty, the black and white composition books. You can actually take those composition books and get them sliced in half at Lowe's. They'll last you a little bit longer if you need more pages. I guess, what else? And then I keep a fluency binder, and it has every skill that's in the tiles book in my binder. Now mine, I had a cluster group last year, so my passages are a little higher. But if you wanted to get your manual and start looking at your table of contents and finding some passages and just sort of tabbing it, it's going to make life a lot easier. Because like I said, if you just build your words up here and you do anything else, you will not get a product. You will, it just won't be a good one. So you really want to take your phonics and you want to embed it in your print, and you want to embed it in your writing for your reading and your writing. So just for example, like with the short vowels, I keep a passage for every short vowel, to where when we finish the lesson, we can record in our spotty dotty, build our sentences, and then we can go to the passage. We can find the skills, answer the questions in a complete sentence, and you're getting a whole lot out of that. But like I said, the people that say, "Oh, I just don't know, I just don't think, it didn't really work for me," those are the people that were just doing it in probably isolation. So you definitely want to maybe start a little binder and make sure that you have something to find in print, because the kids they need that application. Are most of you, because it's going to be tier 3 right now? Is that right?
I think so, yes.
So you're going to want to find passages maybe that are on the level of your children. Just some things that where they can build confidence and just become readers on their level, because they can still get confidence that way. All right, questions? Oh, Ms. Brady, what's your next question?
Well, I don't have a question, but like with my class, it depends on your class, but with my kids last year, they got tired of doing it on their table all the time, so after the first 9 weeks, we moved everything to the carpet,
Yeah.
and they really enjoyed working from the carpet.
Do something different.
Yeah.
And so we try to do something different every 9 weeks or so, just to keep it fresh.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to have those kids that you're going to be like, oh my goodness, this child is taking the whole lesson setting the board up. So what are you going to do? You're going to find somebody that can set that board up. Don't spend so much time on the setup of the board or worrying, okay, Johnny cannot set this board up. Just have someone set it up, or you set it up, find a way just to make it work, because the setup of the board is not where your learning experience lives. You just have to sort of be flexible with those kinds of kids, because it does become monotonous at times as far as the setting up.
I would have to ask a friend to help them just, sometimes setting it up, because they would be
Mhm.
a lot slower maybe than their peer.
They can get, as you fill your board. Now at the beginning, you're going to start with just your consonants. So they're going to feel good about that. They're going to feel like, yeah, I can do that. Then you're going to move to your vowel smile. The reason that the vowel smile is in this form of a smile is because it's how your jaw drops when you make those vowels. The O is at the bottom, and that's why it's here, because that's just how your mouth, the articulation is when you're making those sounds. And so we always tell the kids that every time when you go down the vowel smile, your jaw just drops more and more and more. But so in the beginning, you'll feel like, okay, we've got this. But once you get your whole board full, especially in 1st and 2nd grade, they're going to start to get a little overwhelmed. So you just kind of have to meet them where they're at. And like I said, I know a lot of teachers that are like, well, we're 15 minutes in this and Johnny still doesn't have his board set up. Well, it really doesn't matter. Just set Johnny's board up. Find somebody that can do it. Johnny could before COVID. Johnny could. But
That's true.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are.
Yeah.
We are going to run into that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that would be up to your school how they're going to handle that. I know y'all have smaller groups, right? How many do y'all usually have in your groups? 6? 6 to 8. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So that's still quite a few,
Yeah.
quite
Well,
a few
because
kids.
like whenever my kids come, they're supposed to come at a certain time.
10,
You know how they
20.
trickle into your group. I just had it laid out, and as they trickled in, they would start putting their tiles on their board.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've had years where kids, like, because I've been doing this 3 years, I've had some classes that set up and they want to win, so it's fine.
They want to be
And
first.
then I've had some kids that just absolutely shut down over it. So I think you just kind of have to gauge your group, and you'll know real quick who's going to need that extra help setting up and who won't. I would think that maybe they could, if somebody, if one child needs to work alongside of another, I would think maybe you could make it work somehow. But for the majority of them, they would need their own board. Just because some of them will sit there and let their partner do it all.
Or
That's
maybe
just-
the teacher could help.
Mhm,
I mean, maybe in
mhm.
this case.
Or if you have a third grade core, because I know y'all have all grade levels probably, but if you have a third grade core at the end, maybe they could sort of set up for those little kids coming in. If that works for your schedule, I don't know. But I will tell you that the setup of the board is the hardest part of the whole lesson. So in a lesson, I try to go over the sounds. We pull to the spelling. I try to do syllables. We try to make a sentence. Anything that you can incorporate is okay. Or if you're just not comfortable and you just feel like I just don't have those tricks in my bag, it's scripted. You just read the script. You'll want to read it before they come in there. Because she tells you some little tricks in here as far as your phonics skills that are good tricks to have in your bag. So I would definitely read it the night before at least.
And every now and then there's some words that get kind of tricky because they're rule breakers if you do spotting, and you get to where
Mhm.
you're like, that's, I need to skip that word because it's too confusing
Mhm.
because it's a rule breaker. So it is good to look at that list of words.
Mhm. She also does like real words versus nonsense words. And I think, those nonsense words are fragments or syllables of a real word. And that's why they spend so much time on nonsense words. It's because you're going to find those little chunks in your big words. So the nonsense words are that's what coaches kids into those big, harder words later. So I would do a little bit of the nonsense and I would do a little bit of the real words. I would do both. And she even has it labeled in here, nonsense and real, so you don't have to even think through that.
I also,
Yep.
like Becky said, just add in the stories. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that West Virginia phonics, but there's stories on there that go along with the PSI skills. If you just Google West Virginia phonics, it'll come up, and all the PSI skills are on there. And so if you just, there's short vowels, there's every short vowel, there's a story with it. Some stories are better than others, but there are several stories to go along with each skill. So, like, this is just an example because, after a while, kids get tired of doing the same thing. So I just try to find different things. So this is just an example of when we talked about CK, they had to go through and find words that had CK and just highlight it. So that has some really good things. Like I said, some are kind of more complex than others. I also we would read phrases in our groups that went along with, this has all short vowels, but like if you're working on short E, just doing phrases and that in your small group would be helpful depending on what grade you teach. This came from like an old reading series, but just any other story, like I said, they get tired of the same thing. I also have like a poem when I teach kindergarten, and like in the beginning, you're just getting out the letter P. That's all you do with the tile is P, and then you have B. We would find like the letters in the poem. So this is not actually my letter poems, but just a poem that the kindergartners can go through and find that letter that they're working on. And I have them in sleeve protectors so that they could maybe, instead of making a copy and using a highlighter, just using a dry erase marker and circling the skill or the word or the letter that you're working on. Then I know even the PSI readers, I would just make a copy of, if they're working on short vowels, just make a copy of this page and they would highlight it. And then I don't know if your school has the old Triumph series, but these are also good too, that they actually have, they can't circle anything in there, but I would tie this into whatever skill. If it was a blends, I would make sure and I would find a story that had blends, and we would read the story, and then they would have to go back and tell me a word. Okay, can you find a word that had, we talked about the blend GL, can you find a word in your story? So I just had to make sure that the words correlated with whatever tile skills. And I've also used these workbooks that can be purchased, the journeys. If you're just doing a small group, that would be different possibly than what you were doing, but it also has stories in there that I would correlate with the skill that we were teaching. It had the words, and then it also has comprehension questions at the back. So it's just kind of changing it up because I realized, like Becky said, they just get tired of the same thing after a while. So I just tried to find different things depending on what grade I was teaching. I did this with entitled with kindergarten first and second. So they do get tired after a while of doing the same thing. So just kind of changing it up.
With the skills too, they have these little posters. So if you have a little spot, you could refer to them, maybe hang them up, just to help your kids remember. That starts with the consonants, but even when you're putting that first P on, that's your chance to like build your procedures and teach your kids how to use the box, use the board. So I would not underestimate that time, because you'll regret it later when your board is full if they don't know how to handle those materials. So, but like I said, you can use these and refer to them throughout the year.
And what
And-
about the voiced and unvoiced, like
Mhm.
helping the kids?
It tells you in the manual when you're articulating your sounds. Some voices, some sounds are, what do they call it?
Voiced and
Voiceless.
voiceless, yeah, sorry.
And then some are voiced. It's just if you can hear that sound, or it just make like
I have my kids put their their hands under here. And
Right here.
sometimes just like the P, if you ask them for the P sound, sometimes kids say puh, and
Yeah.
you say, no, you're not supposed to hear it. So if you say it the right way, take your fingers and put it and say puh. You don't feel that vibration, so it's
Mhm.
unvoiced or voiceless.
Mhm.
But when you say the B sound, you feel that. So sometimes just making the kids put their hand under there because they don't say it correctly, but making them be more aware of that, then I think it helps too. We
'Cause
talk
those-
about that.
those-
And that's how it's laid out on your board too. And down here it gets to where it's not, but like your P, T, T, these are your unvoiced or voiceless. And then over here are your but. And if you think about it, it's the same position of your mouth. So P is and it's voiceless. B is but it's voice. So they kind of have that layout. So these are the voiceless and these are the voice. But then it gets down here and then it's not so much the same way. But I just think that's good too, just for kids to recognize that, to make sure that they're actually saying the sound correctly.
Mhm. Well, and that affects their spelling too.
Yes.
So when they're hanging on to those buh and huh, when they go to spell words with those letters, they're going to misspell them just because they're making the sound wrong. And the manual also will tell you where the sound comes from in your mouth. Some sounds will come from your throat, the back, some will come from the roof, and some will come right there behind your lips. So that helps kids too. If you're not familiar with where the sounds live in your mouth, all those things will be in the manual. All you have to do is kind of read up on it. One thing that I like about the tiles is it has the little dots under P and B and D. I would also check your tiles and make sure those dots are on your tiles too, to make sure that when you're using them, they're using the right ones, because they don't know. And so those are things that you have to teach them.
I just say the dot goes down, dot down, just to try to help them remember.
Because they will start shouting out, which one is it? So just to eliminate that, I would check your dots before you get started and make sure that everything is the right way. And like I said, I would definitely do the cheat sheet on your box. Just put a little letter in the corner so you know how to set it up too.
Before it gets laminated, yeah, I didn't do that. And then it was laminated, and then you can't write on it or
Yeah.
it'll wipe off.
Yeah. So it's just all about, getting them before they get you. This is the sound drain. It just has beginning, middle, and end. So when you get ready up here for your owls and your oys, oi at the beginning or middle of a word. So you build these words. Oi at the end of a word is at the end of your train. So this is good for your kids, a good visual to see the difference in the oys. So in your diphthongs. So you'll want to use this and you'll want to keep it somewhere visual. My favorite part of tiles, honestly, is that it teaches you the whys of phonics. I don't know, maybe y'all just had something better than I did, but when I started teaching phonics in kindergarten, I didn't know those things. And so I really had to train myself. And so if you're one of those people that you don't feel as confident in the phonics, this manual is going to be awesome for you, because it's going to teach you all the whys. Why is OI at the beginning or middle of a word? Why do you always say or OI at the beginning or the middle, and then OY is always at the end usually? Now, there are some rule breakers, and you have to teach them about the rule breakers, but sometimes it's just about educating ourselves, to be honest. And I've always tell people, you really can't teach something that you don't know. And I found that to be, you get in the middle of a lesson and you're like, I don't know. And so you have to go back and teach yourself before you can teach them. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to not know. So I think the tiles manual is will be really awesome if you've not had the formal training.
And the good thing about this is, like in the classroom, we use it pretty much. You did a lesson a day, but if you're in a small group and they're not getting it, then it's okay to go back and reteach that same lesson. Because I know in the first and second grade manual, it got to some pretty hard skills, and instead of just keep going and they're not understanding it, you can spend more time on that lesson. Maybe instead of using those same words, like if you're doing blends and they're not getting it, they're leaving out the blend, then you can just find other words, just do other activities with the other stories or other words just to get them to reinforce it. That's what I like, that I could step back and take, extra days to get to until they understand it.
Yeah, our team in first grade at Coles Ferry, I mean, you could ask one person, they might be on lesson 71, and the other person might be on 56. I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's with the
Because
kids'
if they
name.
don't get it, they don't get it. And I would just, reteach it the way that you need to reteach it. But really, the name of the game for first grade, really honestly, your blends, your digraphs, your short vowels. There are grammar things that come in too. And obviously, you want to expose them to that and you want them to know those things. But you definitely want your consonants, your short vowels, your blends, and your digraphs.
And all that's taught in kindergarten too, but it's redone. It's retaught again in first grade. So just getting that understanding.
Kindergarten just does the exposure of it, but first grade, you really want to nail that down because that's how you get those strong readers. Yes.
I'm wondering if you can do an example of a diagraph for the.
Yeah. So let's just say, let me make sure. Some of the tiles are missing. I got to make sure if I pick a word. All right. So the word is ship. Repeat. Ship. All right. Tappers up. Ship. So I might say, guys, Miss Greer just did That's only 3 taps. And somebody might already know that it's SH, and they're going to share that. And I would just say, okay, let's build it, and let's see. So, and I tell them, I call it a digraph, because that's what it is. I'll say, SH is a digraph. And I'll say, let's read it. Ship. And then we would say, who can make a sentence with ship? And then we would play Hickleby, Bickleby, Bumblebee. And I will say, over and over and over, why do you think that SH gets 1 tap? Did you know Miss Greer just did 3 taps? So, but there's 4 letters up there. And then just continue to say it over and over and over, because you'd be surprised. It takes a long time for them to understand the difference in a blend and a digraph. Does that make sense? So, and then I would say, let's take it back to the home row, because that's where the letters live. Ship. And it's fun to, okay, so what do you do? I'm trying to think if I can think of a word that you would need maybe 2 of the letters in a word. So there's a thing called wildcard if you need it, and they're blank tiles. And I sometimes will just keep one like close up to my board. I'll just kind of pin it, or I'll take one of the tiles and flip it. Either way you want to do, and we just say, oh my, we're going to have to play wildcard, because you'll get into those situations. Now, in the manual, it will tell you, okay, it's time to give another S, because in your crate, you'll have more than enough S's to give everybody more than one. But if for some reason you get into a situation, you're in the middle of a lesson, and you're like, we need 2 S's and we only have 1, then you can just flip and say wild card. They love it. And you'll just flip it and put it in that spot, wherever that S would be. So if you get into a situation like that, you can get out pretty quick. And in your teacher board, there are blanks. Like right here, you can just kind of cut them out, and if you need those. And I keep those pretty handy, because sometimes they'll throw you a word, and maybe I haven't given another one of those consonants, and so I just play wild card a lot, because sometimes their box gets so big that I just giving doubles all the time. You can barely shut it. So, and it gets overwhelming when you are setting up. So if you give 2 S's, then you would just double stack them right there. I would play wild card more than I would do double stacking. Y'all know these people. So, okay. That what did I miss?
I was going to add is like just because I do it in small group, I'll do it like an exit ticket. So like just to wrap up the whole thing of what we've been talking about. So like let's just say if we were doing blends, sometimes I would cut little strips of paper and say, okay, see if you can come up with a word with the L blend that we did not talk about today, and then you'll have the kids that will copy a word that you did in that But just try to come up with a different word with the L blend, or if you wanted to erase what you had, and then sometimes like I would have them write on paper or dry erase board, or I would give them one of these boxes that have 3 on one side and 2 on the other. Or if you're doing bigger words, there's one that has the 4 boxes and then the 5 on the back. But just something to have them write, just to kind of wrap up the whole lesson. I would say that's your exit ticket. Okay, come up with the L blend, or come up with a word that has a digraph in it. And then they would write that and show it to me. And of course, if they, had some trouble, then we would talk about it and then they would leave. So it's kind of a good way to wrap it up.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to show you this on the board too. So your consonants are all here, right? Your digraphs, CH, SH, TH, WH. That NG is debatable to me. I would argue it into the ground, but that's what they call it. So then you have some other consonants here. This row right here is where your controlled R lives, okay? So your R can control any of your vowels. And when it does that, or some people call it bossy R. So here's your controlled R or bossy R, your vowel smile, your diphthongs where you have 2 vowels that, make a new sound. Your Y, because Y can be a consonant or a vowel. Does that make sense? Okay, and this is how the kids see that. They'll say, is that a vowel Y or a consonant Y? When it's consonant, it says yeah. Okay, so, and then it's Y, can be a vowel. Your double consonants come after a short vowel. Does that make sense? Any questions? And then these are the letters right here that borrow sounds. And then, of course, your apostrophe. Does anybody have questions about how the board is, what that means? It's okay, ask them.
I'm just wondering can you post that? Can you send us an email of the board and what it should look like, and also the songs that you sang with it?
Isn't there there's a picture of the board set up in the back of your manual. So you would be able to see it. There's also an inventory that you're supposed to give, beginning, middle, and end. Do y'all usually do that?
I didn't in my small group because they were doing it in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. You can do it. It will just kind of assess, like it's a spelling test, and you'll just read a list of 20 words, and they'll spell them, and then you'll kind of mark the ones that they got right. That way you're going to be able to tell, what are they missing? Are they missing controlled R? Are they missing consonants? Are they missing blends? Are they missing digraphs? Like, what do I need to go back and reteach? And that test is back here.
I think I have a picture of it later too. But the good thing about that too is I know it's the same words every time. So let's just say I'm just doing the kindergarten one, it had words that had digraphs and long vowels, which we hadn't even talked about when we did the very beginning. But those other kids that knew how to do that, you're like, oh, okay, they know how to do it. But by the end, it was really good. Like, just neat to see this is where they were in the beginning and this is where they are now, because it's the same exact words that you give all 3 times. And they suggested that you use a different pen color, like when you write it, just to kind of keep up with beginning, middle, and end. But it's just kind of neat to see it since it's actually the same words every time.
And then here's your setup of the board. So it's in your manual, so you can, when you get ready to code your board.
And just make sure you don't set up your board. Your board if you're just doing P, then all you have up there is P.
Yes.
Because I know sometimes at the beginning people would try to set that up, but that's real confusing. So whatever you have in their tile container, that's exactly what matches the board. So at first it kind of goes slow, and you can't make words if you're just doing letters, but then it picks up.
But the whole idea of just putting a P on your board is to train their brain. You don't have a vowel, so you can't do anything. That seems like, oh, they would know that. They don't. They do not know that. And so I just literally say, okay, guys, today we're gonna get that P. Oh, what are we gonna do with P? And somebody will say nothing, And so we put them up there. We put them in our board. We put them in our box. We train the box. We train the board. How you want to set up, clean up, all that. And then I'll say, well, what are we going to do today? Make it long and exasperated just because you have to train them that
That's
until
just the
you
letter.
get a vowel in your vowel smile, you cannot build a word. So it seems so simple, but I think sometimes people just forget to point those things out to them. And then once that will transfer over into those syllables. I got to have a vowel. I got to have a vowel. I got to have a vowel. And it's really fun because you'll get your first vowel and then you can just go to town on it. All right. Okay, so we're going to break apart in groups for just a minute. I'm going to put you with, I don't know, 2 or 3 people maybe. And you're going to get a lesson, read it, and then we're going to let you come up here and you get to be on the tile board. And we're going to see just how watch each other teach a lesson. Does that sound good? It's going to be great. You know, here's the thing. You'll learn when you do it. When you do it. Yes.
When you were talking about the CXQQY, you said borrow sound. Explain that to me.
Yes. Well, and they borrow their sound. They don't have those. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Because that can be hard or soft. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. But you don't even have to worry about it because it is like verbatim in here. It will tell you everything.
And they go ahead and lay that out. That way it kind of builds that foundation because you have that way when you get to that, like remember we talked about it can say or so that way when they get to the words like that, like remember we said that it could do either. I think going ahead and tell them that from the get-go helps because if you just tell them it says k, and later on when they find a word later that it says yes, so I think it's good that they introduce that.
Mm-hmm. Do y'all have anything else to say about the borrowed sounds? Like for your Q and U, qua. I mean, what 2 letters are you going to borrow from that? Yes. Right? That makes sense? Oh, listen, that's a great question. But you don't have to worry about that as much because that is the whole point of the program. It teaches you all those things, and you're going to learn as much as they will. I promise. So, okay, do we want to, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Yeah.
They said we could use the library too. That is one set on one end of the table and one set on the other. You're not required to wear a mask, you can, but there's more room in there if you want to spread out. So but if you get close, then we'll have to wear them.
Okay, so I'll give you a lesson. You'll get with a partner. You'll go and practice your lesson, and then we'll let you come up and teach, and we'll talk you through anything that you don't understand. And that way, you're going to learn by just doing. Okay, here we go. This is going to be great. You want to be with Miss Brady? The 2 of you can be together. Oh, you have a partner? The 2 of you? You need a partner?
It could be us 3.
Okay, us 3. There you go. You want to be with Mary?